Alright, so we're back with another new kit. This is the Team Associated RC10 40-year anniversary, and I'm at a friend's house, and this is his original RC10. And I'm going to leave my kit here so he can open it and go through it and see what we're going to do when we build it. And then in a few days when I come back, we will get started on that, and we'll also show the other vintage one that belongs to his son. Alright, so we cracked into it, we got started, and a couple of things I'm not liking so far is the fact that they didn't give us a proper manual and they put it on us to print it out with a QR code. The older ones came with this proper manual, and I think for the price we shouldn't have had to print one out ourselves. We only got the transmission done so far, but I'm finding that there's play in the differential shaft that I don't like, and I'll probably use some Traxxas nylon washers to put on this end of the shaft just to take up that space. And I'm also not liking the fact that there's this cloth stuff with these little retainers that don't hold it in place. So that's kind of pointless. This side will be held in because of the aluminum plate, but it would fall right out like the other one if it wasn't there. So I didn't know if anyone else had run into those issues, but I figured just try to get this sorted before we proceed. So I'm going to take this back to the lab and see what I can do. Maybe I'll replace this foam stuff with the bearing. Gotta see what sizes I have, but yeah, that's the things I ran into so far. I'm not liking the fact that they didn't give us the instructions like the old vintage kit, and I don't understand why this play is here. We did everything that the instructions call for. So if you too have had this issue, please chime in. Otherwise, stay tuned and we'll see you in the next one. Alright, so we got that transmission issue sorted. What I needed to do to get rid of that play was put some washers on this side of the shaft inside the case. So now there's no more play and we can move forward. I like to start with the transmission just because that can require some time to work out some of the bugs, like in this case. And now we can continue. So we'll go on to bag A and bag B, start on the chassis, and get this thing complete. Making some good progress. Almost have a unit here. All that's left is the shocks, wheels, and the body, and then we'll do the electronics installation. So it's nice to see this thing coming together. It'll be really cool to see this new unit with the vintage original units. Alright, so we got the shocks and wheels done. The thing that's left is the H and I bag, and that's the battery stay and the steering rack. So we'll get that complete next time, but it's nice to see this thing finally together. So a little bit more left to do and we'll have a running car. Alright, so after over a month, I finally got the car complete, and the project was a little all over the place because I was working on it here, as well as a dear friend of mine who I work for. So between back and forth and the challenge that this kit actually is, it was a little slow going, but I got it complete. But some of the things I didn't like about it, as I already mentioned, the fact that they give us a card with a QR code and want the customer to print out the instructions themselves or view it online is kind of ridiculous. They should have given us a proper manual for the price that this is. And it's also not in color, so some of the things are harder to imagine than others. But yeah, that's definitely something that they cheaped out on. And the play in the transmission, they should definitely have had that fixed. I ended up using some of these nylon washers from Traxxas, and that filled the gap there. So I was able to resolve that. This kit is definitely not for anyone beginning. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone unless they're, you know, well versed with building RCs and or have already built one of these. Another way I find that they cheaped out was the fact that they gave us all bushings instead of bearings. You have to get bearings with this if you want to run it that way. I feel like for the price we should have got bearings. The tie rods are not really adjustable on the fly, as other kits are, and this didn't come with a pinion gear. This one did, and I find that, you know, it really should have. Why not? You know, it's kind of necessary. So if they want us to run it the way they intended, they should give us the gearing for it. But I get it, it's supposed to be customized. So yeah, I found the body to be a little subpar. This area here on the window is textured, so the masks are naturally gonna, you know, not adhere perfectly, so leaves room for errors like this. And it's just imperfect, but that's really on the user. So I also painted it in very cold setting, and there's some imperfections in the paint as well, but again, that's on me. I wouldn't recommend painting anything in cold weather, so just take note of that. So yeah, the main thing that was the biggest challenge was the steering linkage, because they give you this and you have to bend it accordingly to whatever setup you're using for a servo and a servo horn. It's just kind of ridiculous. So I ended up customizing something using one of these guided rods from Traxxas and some Traxxas linkage. The whole thing's Traxxas. It's got the servo saver there too. So let's get the lid off and I'll show you that. So this is the setup I used. Just a fly sky, this Endura on-road steering servo, and this is eBay special brushed ESC, but I'm gonna get the motor for it at a later time, closer to when I'm gonna actually drive it. I just needed to make sure I had the ESC so I could test the steering. But here's the steering setup that I did, and it works quite well. So it's always handy to have spare parts like this, because you never know when you're gonna need them. So this is some nitro throttle linkage. I don't know exactly what model. Could be from a T-Max or a Revo. I just bent it and put it on the guided rod with the servo saver. So those all are Traxxas parts. And that's what I did. I don't like the way that they make it to mount these onto the spoiler, because it's just not perfect, and that's why this is a little off. And yeah, that's just something that I messed up on, obviously, but I feel like it could have been made better to avoid this issue. these this point here where these holes are to go through for this mounting point for the spoiler is pretty flimsy, so to use the reamer there, I'm gonna make sure not to use a lot of pressure because it's pretty weak plastic in those corners. But yeah, that's how I have it for now. It's going to be interesting to see this brand new one next to the vintage ones at my buddy's house. After building this, I understand it more, but as I was moving along, it was kind of a pain in the neck. So again, I wouldn't recommend this to anyone who's new to the hobby. This is more for someone who knows where to fill in the gaps with imagination as far as building. So yeah. I actually built this one in between having started this project. I find that Kyosho is superior to Team Associated for sure after building a few of each of the vehicles. The quality of the instructions and the body and the plastics, everything about it is just very, very well thought out, and I would recommend getting one of these over one of these any day. When I get the electronics and stuff, I'll do the adjustments for the camera in the front, but yeah, it's cool to see both of these together. Look forward to racing these with Anthony and hopefully a few others. But yeah, that's my overall take on the RC10. I'm happy that I got that steering thing worked out, because that was really what was stopping me from finishing it. I'll do the body later at some point. We'll see. But yeah, I want to go over the other actual vintage ones and see what the differences are. So you'll want to stay tuned for that, and for more racing buggies. I'm gonna get them worked out so that when the good weather comes, we can just get straight to racing. So if you've made it this far, thank you for your interest in RC. Thank you for tuning in, and stick around because there's going to be a lot more where this came from.